We'll begin our exploration of organic and regenerative agriculture by discussing the history of those movements and the underlying philosophies that drive organic and regenerative agriculture. Agriculture has a long history reaching back to the Neolithic Revolution approximately 12,000 years ago. And different forms of agriculture have been adopted by different cultures around the world, leading to a variety of traditional farming systems. And so here in this image, you can see a traditional form of rice farming. You can also see farming methods that may have been used in Europe or in North America prior to the modern age, as well as an agroforestry system called a milpa that originates in South America, and the Three Sisters system of the indigenous North American populations. Many of the practices and principles of organic and regenerative farming call back to these traditional farming practices. As we get into the modern age of agriculture, much of that is the story and the process of mechanization, the use of the internal combustion engine, allowing for the use of tractors and other implements, really led to an expansion of the ability of farmers to produce on a much larger area. The reduction in labor allowed for a massive expansion in productivity. Along with that increase in mechanization, we have the development of chemistry in the 1930s and 1940s, such as the development of the Haber-Bosch process, which allowed for relatively inexpensive production of nitrogen fertilizers, as well as the development of multiple different chemistries for pesticides, which helped with the management of insect, disease, and weed pests in agriculture. Along with that, particularly in the Green Revolution, there is a rapid increase in the productivity of the varieties of plants being grown, leading eventually to the development of genetically modified organisms, which have again led to a revolution in agriculture. It's notable that along with these developments in modern agriculture, while there are many benefits that attend to those, there are some negatives that have come about as a result of this. And many of the principles, again, of organic and regenerative agriculture aim to reduce or reverse many of these negatives. Going back to our discussion of traditional farming systems, while these systems have existed for hundreds and in some cases many thousands of years, there's been very limited scientific investigation or scientific knowledge around these traditional farming practices. One of the first studies and scientists that addressed the practices of traditional farming systems was Sir Albert Howard, who documented many of the traditional Indian farming methods during his tenure in Pusa, Bengal. And this led to the publication of a text, an agricultural testament, in 1940. The most important element of those observations was a method of composting being used in Bengal, which he referred to as the indoor process. And this would be familiar to many of us who have been engaged in some form of composting, whether that be in our backyard or at the farm scale. In the indoor process, you have layers of alternating vegetable waste material, livestock waste material. These are piled into a trench until they form a windrow above ground. And this pile is periodically turned for aeration in order to allow for oxygen to get down into the compost mixture. And this compost mixture would be maintained for anywhere from 3 to 8 weeks And that would depend upon the ratio of materials used. We'll have the opportunity to talk about some different forms of composting that are currently used. This process is very similar to what we think of as conventional composting. We'll have the opportunity to talk about some variations on this a little bit later in the semester. Well, the real beginning of the organic agriculture movement came with lectures that were provided in 1924 by a gentleman by the name of Rudolph Steiner. Rudolph Steiner was, amongst other things, an architect and an esotericist involved in spiritualism and sort of a European pseudo history, and formed a spiritual philosophy referred to as anthroposophy, which, if you break down that word, would simply be man's wisdom or the wisdom of man. In this series of lectures, he laid out, based on this anthroposophic philosophy, what would be the foundation of organic agriculture. And it's important to recognize that Mr. Steiner was not a biologist or an agriculturist. He came purely from a philosophical background. And I've provided in the module a couple of examples of segments of those lectures for you to have the opportunity to read, kind of see that underlying philosophy. Much of that philosophy serves primarily as the foundation for the next topic we will discuss, which is biodynamic agriculture.